there might be. Let's. Good evening and welcome to UK Crime Book Club. This evening I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Pearse, and we're going to be talking about Sarah's latest book, The Wilds. I think we're having a bit of a lag, aren't we, Sarah?
Oh yes,
we were just talking about you.
We were. Delighted for you to have me on, Karen. Thank you.
We are having it. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time just to get the sort of sync between us. All done. So The Wilds is the third book in your series. So the Ellen Warner. Is it Ellen?
I was discussing this with someone yesterday, and it can be any way you like, but I say Ellen. It is a very unusual spelling. It's not the E-double-L-E-N you'd expect. So it's sort of a Swedish version of the name.
So this is your third book. So would you like to introduce yourself to us and to anybody who doesn't know the books, the previous books?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Pearse, and as you mentioned, I've written 3 books. The first in the series was The Sanatorium, which is a thriller, very, very brief synopsis, set in a hotel that's been converted from an old abandoned sanatorium. We follow Detective Ellen Warner as she investigates the disappearance of her brother's fiancé. We have an avalanche, the guests of the hotel are snowed in along with Ellen, and the body count starts piling up from there. I think that's probably the best description. The second book in the series is The Retreat, and we follow Ellen again, but this time she's back in the UK at a wellness retreat that's set on an island, which is sort of loosely set based on an island not very far from me, though I've taken fictional liberties and pushed it out to sea. Investigating really quite an awful case, actually, of a woman pushed from a yoga pavilion onto the rocks below at the retreat. So yes, it's up to Ellen to solve the case there. And then which I have a helpful copy of to show you if you can see behind. In my third book, Wild, we follow Ellen, but this time she's in Portugal. She's at the Portuguese National Park, and she's investigating the disappearance of an artist called Kia Templar from the park. For Ellen, the trip to the park is meant to be a chance for her to kind of rest and recuperate after the tough case of the retreat. But when she finds a disturbing map the artist has left behind, it soon turns into anything but for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've read all 3 of the books, and she's quite an unlucky lady, isn't she? Really, she ends up
wherever she goes. Trouble seems to follow.
She's a bit Miss Marple, but in a much more current sort of guise, and also gets probably a little bit more exciting locations than Miss Marple.
But it is very much the same thing. Where the detective goes, something disastrous.
Because actually when this book starts and we sort of meet back up with Ellen and her brother Isaac, who have both been through the mill, I think it's fair to say, without giving out too many spoilers. They're actually on holiday, aren't they, having a sort of retreat themselves and a break, but then it's not very long before we find out that actually there's a little bit more behind this visit that Ellen isn't aware of either, that Isaac's has sort of sprung on her.
Exactly.
I mean, I really
as you mentioned, for Ellen, it's kind of after the sort of events of the retreat, she's hoping for a break with her brother Isaac, who we did meet in the sanatorium in awful circumstances. So this is the first time they've sort of met up since, and Ellen is sort of very much with a case sprung upon her. Without giving too much away, Isaac is linked in some way to the person who has gone missing, and he has an ulterior motive for inviting her to the park.
Yeah, I mean, she's very well, she's very sort of, quite even-tempered with the fact that she sort of gets this sprung upon her. And actually, she's almost like one of these people who doesn't look for sort of trouble, but trouble finds her, and that she wants to get, there. So she's not put off by the sort of the what he springs on her, is he?
No,
is she?
not at all. I think that's something we sort of cover off with Ellen in the Retreat in the second book, actually, of how I think she has that urge within her, which I'm having spoken to sort of detectives and things in my research. I think when you kind of have that nature and you are looking to sort of help people and solve a case, I think it's always within you. And I think that's something we see. So even though she's on holiday, as soon as she finds out sort of the details of the case and she sort of empathizes with Kia, the character, she's all in from there.
She's I really like Ellen, and we'll come back to sort of Ellen's character, but I think your characters are always really sort of well written and well developed, and this one is no exception. We've got sort of Ellen, we've got Isaac, who've obviously got their own backstories, but Kia and her brother Penn, and her boyfriend Zeph. Is it Zeph?
Zeph? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Zeph.
Yeah. So did you want to sort of talk very briefly about the characters and sort of how they came about, really?
Yeah, so do you want me to go over Ellen and Isaac, or are you happy?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, you can do those as well.
So I think with Ellen, and just to give a brief synopsis, whether you have read the other books, just to sort of flag it, absolutely can be read as a standalone, this book.
Definitely,
so perhaps a sort of brief introduction to Ellen would help. So Ellen, I suppose, is quite an unusual detective character. She's a character I've always wanted to write, I suppose. I started off writing short fiction, and I've always been intrigued by characters that are very emotionally open on the page. And when I had the idea for the sanatorium, my first book, I didn't originally sort of have a detective character. Ellen wasn't necessarily going to be a detective. But when I thought about it and sort of how I wanted to structure the book, I thought it'd be really, really interesting to kind of have this character who is very emotionally open and vulnerable, quite raw. She's at a sort of crossroads personally and professionally, doesn't have it all together, as we've seen with some detective characters, nor does she have, I suppose, the usual tropes we sometimes see with male detective characters of sort of using alcohol as a crutch or various other things. She's just quite a different character. She's struggling with anxiety and panic attacks as we meet her in the sanatorium. And through the books, she is sort of going on this real journey. We see her sort of develop. We see her go from a career break in the sanatorium where we meet her into having to solve a case. In the retreat, she is solving her first sort of real case back at work. And then here, she's sort of, again, with her brother Isaac, sort of really trying to work on those sort of personal issues as well. As well as something, without giving too much away, a sort of running thread through the books is the idea that someone might be watching Ellen. But I won't say too much more on that. Isaac, her brother, they've had a fractious relationship. They've been estranged when we meet them in the sanatorium. Isaac's a really sort of interesting character for me to write. He's quite an enigma, I think, to Ellen in the first book. And it's quite hard to say too much more without giving that away. But she has lots of feelings for Isaac. So it was really nice to bring them back together in the wilds and see how their relationship could function again as siblings. The book itself is written from Ellen's perspective this time, which we are used to in the sanatorium in the retreat. But in the wilds, we also have another point of view, which is Kia, the woman who's gone missing. And I was really, really interested in writing, I suppose, not so much of a whodunit as a why-done-it. And Kia Templar is a nomadic character. If I show you on the book here, we can see her camper van, which I think is sort of, shown really wonderfully with the sort of wild sort of expanse of the park.
It's a great cover, yeah. Your book covers are always great, actually.
Yeah, they're kind of quite atmospheric, I think, which works with the book. And she's living this nomadic lifestyle, and it was something I'd wanted to write about, this idea of van life, and it's something that's really kind of in vogue at the moment, the idea that you can kind of take off and live this life on the road. But I was really intrigued as to why someone would do that, as well as the idea of, personally, I would feel quite vulnerable, sort of living that way, sleeping out in the wild with only sort of a thin wall of the camper van between you and this outside world. Without giving too much away about Kia's backstory, she's had quite an emotionally charged childhood. She has a twin brother, Penn, who we meet. They are very, very close. We can see that at the beginning of the book. But things that have gone on in their childhood really, really haunt them. And I think we sort of learn why she is living that nomadic lifestyle and why she's so compelled to sort of keep traveling. We also meet a character called Zeph, who is a chef, who is Kia's partner, and it's safe to say their relationship is troubled.
Yes, I think, I quite liked the sort of the symmetry between Isaac and Ellen's relationship as siblings and Keir and Penn's relationships as siblings.
Yeah.
I always think it's when you've got, I guess, as you know, having two sisters myself, I always find it quite fascinating reading about other people's sort of sibling experiences. Luckily, I get on with both of my sisters, so there isn't any. Although, I mean, to be fair, you know, these siblings are close. They just both have backstories, don't they, which developed, and we find out more about as the book goes on.
And just to interject, I think that's a really important actually point, because though they do get on, one of the things, and that's actually what drives, I suppose, my fascination with writing about family and sibling relationships, is how differently, depending on where you are in a family, how you might experience that family dynamic, and how differently you can kind of appear to each other. And I think we see in all of the books, the siblings hiding things from each other, not necessarily completely trusting the relationship, even if they are close, which I find interesting.
Yeah, no, I must admit, I found that interesting as well. I really did. Are we lagging again? There we are, aren't we?
Sorry, I think I interrupted your question.
No, that's fine. No, I was going to say that one of the things that one of the themes in the book is around sort of coercive control and abuse, and I think it's important to sort of to talk about that in the wider sense, because obviously we're not going to give away who that affects, but actually it is a theme throughout the book, isn't it? And so I was interested in the sort of how difficult that was to write, because some of the scenes are very sort of traumatic, emotional, aren't they? Did you find that when you were writing them?
Absolutely. It really sort of took it out of me in the writing process, actually. Sometimes I did have to take a bit of a break from writing, because I really wanted, in the sort of I suppose sphere of emotional abuse and coercive control, I'd done quite a lot of research with the charity Refuge here in the UK, and I'd read online, offline, some stories, and it's a really harrowing thing. So those were really, really hard to write, and quite emotionally charged for me as I was writing them. Was it sort of, you said you had to have a break, and I think it's interesting, isn't it, when you're sort of investigate. I imagine when you were researching those relationships, they're never as sort of simple, are they, and as clear cut as people think. And as a reader, you might read it and think, oh, why didn't they go, why didn't they do this? But actually quite often there's a lot more tied up within it, isn't there? Like the sort of emotional blackmail and fear is massive, isn't it, in those situations? Absolutely, and you hit on such a good point around that, and that's something I sort of really learned with my sort of research with Refuge, is that it is very rare that someone in that situation hasn't fallen in love with someone at the beginning, and there can be a process of that sort of love bombing, and that goes on throughout a relationship, which pulls someone back into that relationship. And that is really key in that sort of emotional abuse and coercive control, that they have that sort of hold over them, because they aren't all bad, as we see sort of in the book. And that's something I try to sort of show, I suppose, of how and why someone might get into that situation, and it isn't as clear cut. And that's something I really learned in my research of, with domestic violence, physical abuse that we are used to sort of seeing and reading about. I think it's very clear cut. If someone hits someone, that is wrong, and I think people know where those lines and boundaries are. Obviously in relationships that can escalate, as we know, but with emotional abuse and coercive control, often the person, the survivor in the relationship, doesn't always know that is exactly what's happening to them. And it's something Refuge is really working on, and something I really wanted to do in the book is bring awareness to what might emotional abuse and coercive control look like. So it isn't physical violence. It can be someone just intimidating you. It can be someone tracking you. And one thing I learned, which was hugely disturbing, is how technology has enabled abusers to really escalate their abuse. So they can track someone via a smart doorbell, for example. They can track their spending using apps. And all of this is quite insidious, and it can always be quite slippery in a way, because it can be wrapped up in love. And I think that's something in the book, and with the scenes, I won't give away the relationship, but in certain scenes, I try to show that kind of fine line between, is something happening to me or is it not? And I think one of the things that the abusers tend to do in this situation, from my research with Refuge, is make that person question themselves and their judgment. And that's a sort of key part of the process. They can isolate the survivor and make them feel really vulnerable. And that, it does make them question if anything is happening to them or not.
Because I think that's the thing in this book, is that the person, the one of the people in the relationship has had a really traumatic thing happen to them in their life already, which makes them question themselves anyway. So that sort of is like a double whammy, isn't it, almost?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, again, it's really interesting you've picked up on that. That was one of the key parts I wove in for my research with Refuge, actually, is how when someone has been either a witness to or seen that kind of relationship dynamic in their own childhood, that makes them vulnerable. And a potential abuser will see that vulnerability and can exploit that. So it's almost that generational echo is something I explore in the book. But, yeah.
Should we quickly talk about Zeph? For me, I mean, he definitely gave me sort of Anthony Bourdain stroke Marco Pierre White.
Yes.
But actually, as the book progressed, I was like, oh no, maybe not.
Yes.
But yeah, that sort of angry, sort of passionate chef, you know, Gordon, you know, all those sorts of ones that you see on the TV, isn't it? You know, the swearing and the hot-headedness and the passion. Was he inspired by anybody, or was it just a sort of a combination of
It absolutely was. All the names you've mentioned, actually, it's just one of the things that interests me sometimes with creativity, and I think it can be whichever creative industry you're in, actually, whether it's kind of cooking or kind of rock stars. I think sometimes we can indulge that sort of bad behavior somehow by saying they're hot-headed. So I think that was something I was really sort of keen to exploit, because Keir as a character is very much attracted to that in a way, sort of glamorizes that aspect of his personality. And it was one of the, I think I can sort of mention this, one of the scenes in the book speaks about, and this was a true story I had read online, was about a chef in a kitchen with a sous chef. One of them had severed a part of the finger, and rather than say go to hospital, the senior chef had encouraged them to sort of wrap the finger back up and just carry on. So that was directly inspired from something I'd read about awful chefs and bad kitchen working environments. So
I think it is, and it's again like one of the things in the book that sort of interested me is that she does, like, when she's talking about him, and she sort of, because she has like this internal sort of internal dialogue, doesn't she, with herself about him and, you know, his behavior, and she does, and she puts it down to the, you know, well, it's because he's passionate about his job, and you know, he's creative, all these things. Exactly. And you know, you can sort of say, and in the beginning you sort of think, well, you know, maybe she's, you know, but he's complicated. I think it's fair to say that, isn't it? He's a complicated character.
A very complicated character. And I think
very complicated character.
Exactly as we touched on, I didn't want him to be sort of, I suppose, a caricature of just a completely sort of crazy bad chef. I think we see sort of, different sides to his character, which made him really interesting to write in lots of ways.
Because I found it, I really like, I saw your video online. I think you posted it Monday or Tuesday on Instagram of the park in Portugal that inspired you. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it looked really creepy. You managed to find the creepiest places. The sanatorium was that creepy sort of old sort of sanatorium, wasn't it?
Exactly.
So you go on holiday and you're like, right, what creepy place can I find?
And actually with the park, a few readers, sort of early readers, have said that even though the park, you know, I describe it as kind of it's a national park, it's a big place, they felt it quite claustrophobic. And that's something I definitely experienced about it. And it is really interesting. I kind of live in Devon by the sea. We have quite this sort of wide open vista. And obviously there are rural areas, we have the moors, but we don't really have, I suppose, that sense. The forests are quite small. We don't have that sort of huge park sense in that way. And the national park in Portugal isn't on the scale of a national park in America, Yellowstone, or any of the big parks. But at certain points that I visited, you can walk for miles without seeing anyone. And one of the bridges I described, the sort of Devil's Bridge, these kind of quite old bridges that you can see genuinely are hundreds of years old. Lots of the sights and kind of experiences I had there, including a wolf pit. I think that was one of the images I showed where the sort of, used to beat the kind of cattle in, and lots and lots of sort of really sort of interesting experiences when I was in the park, including actually something which made me sort of feel like I was a little bit stepping back in time. So we went into a bar and there were no women in the bar at all, and bar the lady sort of serving, and she said, oh no, the bar is only for men, the women are at home. And it just really made me think this is a really interesting place to explore. I hadn't read lots of books about Portugal, but it did genuinely feel like stepping back in time, and I don't think there are many places that say that.
No.
And it just is, it's very raw and very wild, hence the title. But I genuinely felt quite vulnerable there at times, and this is something I felt definitely in the Alps when I was writing The Sanatorium, and always feel when I'm out at sea with the Retreat. I think you have that sense of nature being much bigger than you, and you're a sort of tiny speck amongst that.
Because I think like the setting for your books is really important, isn't it? It's very much a character in its own sort of right, really. You know, the island, the hotel, and now the park. Do you start with the setting? Is that something that sort of inspires you? Is it something, did you like, when you went to Portugal, did you find this place and think, right, that's going to be where I'm going to set a book here, or something else?
Yeah, it was actually with this book. It's a really good question, because with the sanatorium, I suppose it was more the building itself. So I'd read this article about the sanatorium, so it was the building, and then obviously the wider alpine landscape came into that sort of naturally. But with this book, I did have this idea of this nomadic character who was an artist, who drew and painted these maps. So I had that idea, but I hadn't had a location. And it was on holiday. I wasn't even particularly looking for a location. It's something I kind of just sort of think, it will come to me, kind of be patient. But it was when we were on holiday and went to the park, it was immediate. So it was kind of a mixture of both. I had the character, but the setting very much then influenced the plot, as you can sort of see in the book.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing that I found really interesting in the book was the maps, the card. So do you want to say a little bit about Kia and her sort of occupation, hobby sort of thing?
Yeah, so Kia's an artist and she paints and draws. It's not her day job. She's an illustrator as her sort of day job. But one of the things she's done sort of since she was a child is essentially paint what are her own sort of personal life maps, for want of a better word. So they're not maps of the usual landmarks you'd see, kind of roads and hospitals, etc. She's sort of, and it's very much abstract sort of experimental art, but she's painting, I suppose, her experiences of places that she's been and what they mean to her. And the idea really came about actually after I was processing a loss of my own. And I started thinking about, with that person, I'd been to sort of lots of places in my local area that were really painful to revisit afterwards. And I started thinking about the sort of emotional hold that places have on our lives, both positive and negative. And Kia in the book talks about the positive and paints sort of maps of the places that really mean and celebrate. But she also has the unmapped. And that was very much where the idea came from, that we all have this life map in our heads. If I could walk outside into my town now, there are kind of really key places that hold a lot of memories. It might be a place you walk the dog, or you meet a friend for coffee, or a place with a wonderful view that's helped you process the loss of a loved one, or even the gym where you kind of, work off the stresses of the day. So I was really sort of inspired by that idea. And in the book, that map very much provides Ellen with the key to sort of finding out what's happened to Kia.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I think that it's really true, isn't it? That's sort of how you sort of, when you go through sort of, grief and loss, that you don't want to hold on to those sort of bad things. So, so she doesn't sort of put those in the map. She puts the good things in, which is, really sort of, it makes sense, doesn't it? Why would you want to, you don't want to have that sort of pushed in your face, do you? So you sort of,
like pressing on a bruise.
Yeah. Exactly. But actually it's interesting. I was reading one of your reviews, and I felt it when I was reading it, was that it's almost like a puzzle, like the map is almost like a treasure hunt, and I think that sort of like gives you the clues to go through. And I wondered how difficult that was for you to write, sort of knowing, was that sort of something that came quite early, or was it something that came with the editing sort of process?
It's a mixture of both, actually. So I had the idea of the map. I do just love maps in fiction anyway. And I think the treasure hunt thing is quite kind of a key point, because I did want to have, I suppose, a structure. And when I had the idea of the maps, I thought that would work really well. But some of the places I visited the park another time and come away with kind of ideas for key settings and scenes and how they could work with the book. And some of them, without giving too much away, tied in really nicely with the plot. So some of them sort of came to me as I was writing, but others I had in mind at the beginning, because I needed to think of places that would really mean something and sort of be essential to that sort of forward narrative and to the other characters in the book, and the camp, the mysterious camp that's nearby. So it was weaving quite a lot together.
So we can probably touch on the camp a little bit, can't we? Because it is sort of quite integral to the story. So, you know, Isaac and Ellen are sort of staying in their Airstream in camper, aren't they? And they sort of come across the camp, and it's sort of quite shrouded in mystery right from, I think, quite early on, and the things sort of happen as they're there that they both sort of think, well, that's a bit weird. So how did that sort of come about?
Yeah, that was something, and it was something we'd spoken about to sort of rangers, the equivalent of what we would say rangers, sort of in our parks, national park. It was the idea of sort of people living off grid, and it's different in Portugal. We didn't really experience kind of people doing that, but we did sort of speak about the idea of sort of people camping, sometimes illegally, and kind of moving on. And it's just something I've been really intrigued by, the idea of that sort of off-grid lifestyle and why you might choose that. And I really liked the idea of this sort of group of people that are very enigmatic. And I think for Ellen, as you sort of mentioned at the beginning, that sort of scratching the itch and wanting to know what's sort of beneath the surface of that group, and understanding that Maggie in the group is sort of very much this matriarch figure. And I'm always, one of the things, I'm really intrigued by, and I think probably affecting my life, I've had strong matriarch figures in my life. That idea of the sort of powerful woman, I think Maggie was really, really intriguing to write. So the camp came about right at the very beginning of the plot.
And I think it makes it really interesting because as I was reading, I can say that I didn't guess what was going to happen.
Oh, good.
Because I'm rubbish at it. And actually, I really like not being able to guess. I was going in a completely different direction, which I think that you probably intended me to do. So
tell me what you were thinking.
Because well, I sort of felt that so Romy, I sort of is it Romy?
Yes,
Romy. So she's Zeph's ex-girlfriend, and there's sort of a story behind that as well, which again we can't go into.
We can't talk about.
I was sort of I think I was quite hooked in by her and her story. Rather
really
than the direction that it went. So I was like, okay, right, I didn't see that coming. I'll have to tell you afterwards.
It's really interesting because I've read a few reviews of someone said I did guess, and I was like, I'm intrigued. So it's like, it would be nice to see sort of, I think, where it lands as to did people sort of work it through. But I'm glad. I won't say too much more.
No, I think I didn't guess it, so I like that. I must admit, I do like to be surprised. And was there any surprises in it for you when you were writing? Is there anything that you thought it was going to go one way and then went completely differently?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, it's so hard to say. But with the camp itself, I think some of the characters there, I hadn't quite planned on their characters evolving in the way they had, and I think that often comes when you're writing. We have sort of Ellen meeting the characters and sort of being in conversation. I often find through dialogue, I learn things about the characters. So when I see them in conversation with others, and I can have very much fixed in my mind, they are this type of person. And then when they are in conversation with Ellen or with another character, you see another side to their personality. And that is really, I suppose, quite the exciting part of the writing process for me, is getting to know the characters. And in this book, it's quite a whole new cast of characters, as opposed to so quite a lot of surprises, I think. I like to sort of keep it fairly open. I have key scenes planned, but leaves me room to sort of explore.
Because I think so in this one, because obviously I'm in Devon as well, so we're the book features quite heavily one part of the book features Devon quite heavily. And was that quite nice to write about your own sort of county and your own home? Because your other books are all sort of set up, you know, they're away, aren't they? I know they're sort of based on places that you've been and things, but was that fun?
It was really fun, and it's something just from the research process, because I didn't know Portugal well. There was lots of, even asking my Portuguese publisher actually, who was really helpful. But because the park isn't sort of somewhere, you wouldn't find lots in English about it online, bar kind of TripAdvisor sites and that kind of thing. So there was challenges in the research process. So writing about somewhere you know is wonderful, and particularly with Kia when she's talking about the maps. Throughout the book, and places that are special to her. I have to say, there's a little bit of kind of elements of me there and the places that are special to me. So it's wonderful to write about. We have, particularly here in Torbay, sort of the rusty red cliffs and sands, which I'm able to reference in the book. So yeah, it's really nice bringing a place you know so well to life. Yeah.
And the thing is, as well, you know, Devon, as well as other places, you know, Devon's got lots of history and lots of sort of, you know, connections. And so I think it's always really nice to, you know, I always like reading about other places, but it's also really nice to sort of read about a place that you know yourself, and to be able to sort of go back there. And like you said, that map of your life can, you know, it's very much influenced by, you know, the place that you grow up, isn't it? And has the impact on you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's something in a chat I was doing at a bookshop yesterday evening. We were kind of discussing this, how much your childhood has a role in your life. And I think that's something we see sort of explored in the book a lot, is that legacy of the past. We see it with Ellen in all of the books, the legacy of your childhood. And definitely with Place. I think Place, even now, I dream of places more than anything, of places I'd sort of experienced in my childhood. I think it's that formative period when you're growing and changing. Places that, you know, kind of traditions, your grandparents' house that you might have spent Christmas and all those kind of things, they make you as a person. And I think definitely.
I think, has it sort of, so this is, as we said at the beginning, this is the third book in the series, and the final one, is it the end?
Yeah, I have to say it is the end for Ellen for now. I'd never say never. I think Ellen as a character is really interesting, but I think at this point in her journey, obviously can't say how the book ends, but I think it feels like a natural and fitting conclusion for her sort of emotional arc that we've seen in the books. But I'm writing a standalone next, but maybe potentially in the future. But I think it would be interesting to explore sort of Ellen at a different point in her life, maybe, if I ever sort of came back to Ellen. But the next book is a standalone, which I'm quite excited about.
Well, we'll come back to that in a second, because that does sound exciting. If you're allowed to tell us anything about it, that is. Was it when you wrote the Sanatorium? Did you always know it was going to be 3 books, or did that sort of happen? You know, is it been like 1, 2, 3?
No, it was only really probably halfway through the Sanatorium that I decided it would be more than one book, and I think. When I thought about her emotional arc as a character, I didn't think I could do it in 2, actually. So with the sequel, so I think I probably knew from there it would be 3. But at the very beginning, the idea for the Sanatorium and the plot, it's very much a self-contained book in many ways. Once you've read that book, you know, lots of things do tie up, bar Ellen as a person. I didn't feel, when we meet Ellen in the Sanatorium, she's sort of, you know, at her lowest there, personally and professionally. And I didn't think there was any way in the book, with telling the story I did about her and her life and her sort of childhood experiences, that her emotional arc could be tied up in one book. I think we needed to see her go on that journey as a character. So it was probably halfway through when I realised I've got a lot more to say about Ellen. I can't leave her here.
That's quite nice though, isn't it, to sort of have that, I guess, to sort of be able to think, right, I've got enough. Because quite often I imagine when you sit down to write a book, that sort of fear of not having enough to sort of write down, it must be nice to have the other sort of you know, sort of conundrum that's, you know, what, I've got too much to write.
Exactly. And it's something that's quite daunting with writing a standalone. With Ellen, I know her so well, and obviously I get to know her more when I'm writing, but there's definitely a sort of comfort blanket of having that character and knowing where they are in their life and sort of slipping back into that voice. So it is nice in many ways, sort of being familiar with the person you're writing about.
And has that made it easier or harder to write the sort of the subsequent books? Has it, because you know her, that has that made it easier, but also it's sort of given you restrictions sort of what you can do with her?
Definitely. That's such a good question. I don't think anyone's asked me that before. And I think,
Oh,
I
good.
was thinking about it. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, actually, just in terms of sort of her as a character and her arc, because I think when you are writing through a series and you have the plan in mind of sort of what's going on, there is a limit in a way of what you can do per book. Because I also
Yeah.
think within the realms of probability, obviously we see in the sanatorium, she's at the lowest ebb. She goes on a huge journey in the book, but I think to sort of maintain that complete sort of sense of drama and her evolving through all three would be quite hard. Whereas I think when you are writing a standalone, you can kind of go for it in a slightly different way. But I think Ellen, we had the restrictions of you already know her relationships, etc. And unless you're sort of jumping forwards in time, there are restrictions in play because we know her, we know the sort of limitations of her life, we know where she is in the job. So there are definitely restrictions in writing a series in that sense.
Yeah, and I guess it's sort of, do you sort of have to have have you got like a spreadsheet so you remember everything you've sort of said about her, or so you don't get her birthday wrong, or that she's got brown eyes and you said she had blue in the first one? And
that's so funny because when I wrote the Retreat, I was writing the Retreat kind of very, very quickly after the Sanatorium and before the Sanatorium was published. So all of those details are very fresh in my mind, but there was a slight sort of delay of just what had happened with the books and with lockdown between sort of starting book 3. And I really did need that spreadsheet. There were things that I was thinking I've got to remember, even with Will, exactly, double check on the eye colour, hair colour. So there was definitely a sense of having to write things down. I have to say, even with lots of editorial eyes on it, my UK team, the US team, there were sort of elements we had to double and triple check with dates. Because in the wilds, we are tying up sort of elements of the plot of the Retreat and the Sanatorium. So it was key we got those dates right.
I mean, it must, I mean, I struggle to remember what happened yesterday sometimes, let alone something that I wrote, weeks ago, months ago, years ago even. Have the ideas sort of, is that sort of something that's has been easier? Has it sort of, did you sort of, you had the plan of writing the 3 books, but have you found it easier as you've gone through the series, or harder to sort of keep keep going, I guess?
Keep going. Probably easier in some ways, only in the sense, and it's never easy to find an idea at all that you're kind of believe and are passionate about. Because I think for me, to write the book, you really have to have an idea you are fully engaged with to come back to the page and want to write it kind of in the right way. But I think it's easier. The one element that is easier is the confidence I think you have, in the sense that you have finished a book before. And I think all the stress and strains and worries you have at the start of a book, I've now learnt there's a pattern. So the sort of angst and worry you feel at the beginning of...
You're like, I remember this,
yeah, exactly. Is this plot, will this plot stand up? Will I ever get to the midpoint? Will I ever get to the end? My husband will testify as well. All those sort of doubts, I've gone through it twice before, so there's an element of that is easier. But I don't think finding an idea is. I think for me, that takes a bit of time to find something that I am engaged with. And the idea of the sort of coercive control came to me quite naturally because of the feedback I'd had from the sanatorium. But I hadn't sort of absolutely planned that from book 1. But once I had that idea, it gave me a really good, I suppose, skeleton for the story.
Because I think sort of all the books, that I think it's really interesting when you bring a subject in that is quite emotive, like coercive control. And I guess as a writer, that you almost feel a responsibility to sort of want to be able to do justice to that, because obviously it is, you're putting it out there. Did you feel that sort of pressure of, it's got to be right, it's got to be, I've got to sort of, get this on the page as it needs to be?
Absolutely. It was a huge pressure, and it was just, something I was aware of really from the planning stages. So I sort of started working with Refuge really, really early and sort of having those initial conversations. And they were very much sort of involved as I was writing the book with sort of questions. And then they sort of, very much did a sort of sensitivity check afterwards. And I did feel a sort of huge responsibility that there was nothing gratuitous in the writing. and that it was very sort of hopefully sensitively done. I think, yeah, you do have a huge responsibility when you're writing about something to portray it as accurately as possible.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
why I think the research sort of around why someone might be in that situation, you know, lots of the self-doubt, all those kind of things, I wanted to get that sort of as accurately as possible. So yeah, there was definitely a pressure there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's, you know, having those sort of, you know, character, you know, sort of things that, you know, some people will find difficult to read. And I think, you know, some people, you know, might avoid reading about it, and some people might come across it, you know, accidentally, and that can possibly be a good thing, because, you know, as reading, you know, something that you might think, well, actually, that's, you know, oh dear, that's not good. You know, because actually I think it's not as simple, is it, as just as like you said, if someone strikes you, then they strike you. But if it's a lot more clever and subtle, that's the word I was looking for, subtle than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I discussed with Refuge a lot, about that subtlety, definitely. And then also the idea of, you know, fiction. And they've worked closely with sort of soaps before on television and how it's portrayed. And I think that is the power of kind of fiction, be it crime fiction or, you know, any other kind of fiction, is the idea that indeed there may be some people that find that really, really hard to read about, but other people who might pick up a book and they're, you know, reading a page-turning book, but they might recognise something in there, either for a friend or something they've experienced almost incidentally. And I think that's where, you know, you can in fiction raise sort of these topics and issues, whatever light touch or not, and hopefully it might help someone or raise awareness in some kind of way. And I think in a novel you are given the space and time to develop characters. And I think then when, without giving too much away, when there are reveals in, or particularly kind of emotive scenes, as a reader, you've really invested and gone on that journey. And hopefully, that really makes you understand, the subtleties, exactly as you say, you've got the space and time to explore those subtleties.
Definitely. And I think with when you're writing about something like that, I mean, you touched on it actually with the soaps. And I think it is, you know, as humans, we want to find out about other people's stories, regardless of whether whether it's something that we might recognize in ourselves or we don't. And actually that again that can be a good thing as a human, to sort of get that knowledge, isn't it, of what other people might experience.
Exactly. And we were also speaking about sort of first person stories. For example, you might read in a newspaper or a magazine, and sometimes people might pass them by because they aren't sort of in that moment or wanting to read. Feel that's too hard hitting when it's related to a sort of person that, you know, there's a photograph, for example, and they find that, but within a book, it's sometimes almost a safer way to explore those topics and ideas. And I think that's definitely too, like a soap.
What was the hardest part to we talked about difficult scenes, but what was the most sort of technically, I guess, difficult part to write about the wilds?
Without giving too much away, I always think for me the sort of midpoint of a book is almost as important as the ending. So I think for me, I like to sort of drive towards a sort of good middle of a book. And hopefully there's a change at that point in a book, without giving too much away, that really sort of affects that character. So that middle section, working out what comes where, was really hard. And then also, which was a new challenge for me, was the two timelines. And that isn't something I've sort of written in that way before. I've had a different point of view, but I haven't juggled those timelines. And because this book is sort of tying up elements of the retreat and the sanatorium, that was really challenging, to make sure I didn't give things away at certain points without giving too much away now. And tying that together, and that was really hard. And I had to sort of at some points almost give up in terms of juggling the timeline, and I would write from one point of view and then work that back through later. So that was hugely challenging technically.
Yeah, well, that was one thing I was going to say to you about the sort of the two timelines that you said you hadn't done that before, and I think it always really fascinates me how, you know, whether you write them, so some people will write them concurrently, so they'll write all of the, you know, in this case 2018 chapters, and then you've got the 2021. So did you write them together, or did you write them sort of as separates and then sort of, you know, mesh them effortlessly
together? It was a mixture mixture of both, because I think when you read the book, there are kind of reveals, I suppose, in one of the timelines that kind of have to sort of effortlessly work with the present day narrative. So it was meshing together. But yeah, I have to say it was a mix. There were times when I was quite comfortable moving from one point of view to another on one timeline, and other times where, particularly, I have to say, with Kia's scenes that were quite emotionally involving, I was just wanted to carry on writing. And I think sometimes that can work well, because I think when you are in that sort of character's head, and she's a character that came to me almost fully formed, which I haven't had before, even with Ellen, get to know as a character. And I very much wanted to stay inside her head and kind of carry that emotion through. And I think that can work really well, actually, if you are able to sort of keep that forward momentum. So yeah, it was a mixture of both.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of thinking as I was reading, because obviously I knew I was going to talk to you. So it's really different sometimes reading a book just for pleasure, or reading a book that you're going to sort of talk to somebody about, because you do want to try and sort of pull the bits out. But actually, I found her fascinating as a character, because, you know, she's got so much going on. You know, she's had so much happen to her in her life. And that sort of carries on without giving it too much away. But
I know it's so hard, isn't it?
It's really hard. But I really liked her as a character. And yeah, I was sort of I was sort of relieved how her, you know, sort of, you know, that I was maybe wrong about her, because I doubted her in the beginning.
Oh,
you know.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Good. That was sort of what I hoped, actually. So
yeah, so I think I wasn't sure about her. I wasn't sure where it was going, which I like, again, as we said. So that's
good.
So that was a good.
Oh,
a
good.
Good little,
Yeah, again, that's so hard to know when you're writing, if that kind of lands in a way. So yeah, it's good.
So we talked about, so this is the third in the series, and you just actually, one thing before we move on to the sort of what's next and things, I was sort of interested with I've completely, it's gone out of my head now, so I'm going to have to come back to it in a minute, because that's like what happened. It's like drop, and then it dropped out again. I'll come back to it in a minute. But no, actually, I remembered it. Sorry, I'll come back. So basically, I was going to say was the you said about going back and finding out where you sort of the other books, and we were saying about you could read it as a standalone, which you absolutely could, but actually reading it as someone who's read all three, I was like, oh yeah. So I remember. So actually, if you haven't read them, you're going to have to read all three, but you can read it on. But actually, there was enough there to know what had happened, and you just drop a little, you know, bit in of what it is, and then so if you haven't read the book, then that's enough. But actually, if you have read the other books, then it sort of makes sense. You know, you think it sort of joins up to like,
good.
So
yeah, that was actually, that's probably something I should have mentioned when you said about the sort of technical challenges of writing it, because that was something so hard. And I have to say, I did have some help from my editors with that bit of knowing exactly how much information to go into for a new reader who hasn't read the series, as well as providing the kind of satisfaction for the readers who you have those aha moments where it sort of feeds back together. So it's that balance when you're writing a book that can be read as a standalone or not. So yeah, I did have some help with elements of that.
Yeah, no, I imagine that's really tricky. I was thinking of that because you know, I have read books where I've read like way into the series, which horrifies my husband if he's watching, because he likes to read in strict chronological order, and you must not deviate from that.
Starting at one.
So he absolutely is horrified if I say I've started on book 13, and it's like, and he was like, you can't do that. So actually, so for all those people like me who can, I think it's really important to be able to do that, because, you know, as a reader, you might just go in and pick up book 13 without, you know, knowing what the other 12 are about. So you have to be able to drop enough in, don't you, as an author, so that people can pick up wherever, and then if they want to go back and read the other 12 or 3 or 2 in your case, you can. And that's
exactly. And it's that balance of information at the beginning without it sort of weighing things down or seeming too much. So it is a tricky one, but I think sort of, as you say, sort of almost seeding kind of key points that hopefully will kind of orientate a new reader is
So moving on to what you're working on at the moment, you sort of mentioned that you're doing a standalone. Are you allowed to tell us anything about it at all?
Probably not too much, just to say that it's obviously a thriller. And yeah, it involves a house. That's probably not very helpful. But no, I think I can probably just say one of the topics I've picked up on a lot in probably, I suppose, the sanatorium more than anything is around sort of architecture and how buildings can kind of make you feel. And that's something I'm digging into a lot deeper. So it's a little bit spooky, already giving me sort of nightmares in starting to write it. So yeah, but really, really exciting to have sort of, a whole new cast of characters and a whole new setting. So yeah, in the early stages, but yeah, going well.
So when do you think that you're working on that at the moment? So is it sort of in the first draft? Are you at the first draft stage?
Yes, in the first drafting stage, which is always really exciting. There's always that kind of immense sort of hope and sense of possibility of anything can happen before you hit the kind of dreaded 30 to 40% mark, which I'm not quite at yet, where you doubt, is that a good idea? So it's kind of lots of note taking, lots of research, which I love. I love pulling in kind of ideas from sort of non-fiction books, from kind of, I love New Scientist magazine. There's a little snippet kind of at the beginning of The Wilds where we talk a little bit about DNA. So not too much, but I'm always sort of on the hunt for new ideas. So I love that gathering process at the beginning of a draft. So yeah, in the early stages, but all good.
Do you get distracted by your research sometimes when you're sort of, are you down the rabbit hole and off to TV matter sort of thing?
Don't tell my editors. Yeah, no, I really am. With the sanatorium, I was in that luxury of it being a debut. I had no publishing contract, so I could do as much Google rabbit holing as I was able to. And yeah, with the sanatorium, it was particularly architecture and urban, exploring old abandoned sanatoriums. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I did a lot of history, clinical history in Switzerland about tuberculosis sanatoriums. So much went into the sort of research that never made it into the book. I really only skimmed the surface of that, but I came away a bit of an expert on sanatoria in Switzerland. But yeah, I do love that. But I actually think it is important because I think you are able to speak about it knowledgeably, even if you only show 1% of that research. I think it informs everything. But yeah, I probably have a tendency too much to go down the rabbit hole.
But you'll be fantastic in a pub quiz if sanatoriums ever come up as a subject.
Yeah, and obscure clinical equipment. Yeah.
But I think it does help, doesn't it? Like if you, like you said, if you do know, and if someone, because actually readers will be your harshest critic, won't they, as well as if you get something wrong.
Exactly. No, they really will. I've had those moments. I was actually speaking last night about the kind of police procedure and that kind of thing. And I think my books aren't police procedurals, so I think people do have a bit of leniency with credibility and believability with Ellen. But in the sanatorium, I think you do have to be rooted in reality. So I had to have conversations with the Swiss police of exactly what would and wouldn't happen, even though, they were very forceful on the idea that they could always get to a hotel, even if there was a huge snowstorm. But I think you do have to sort of, be rooted in detail. And readers will definitely say if they feel something isn't accurate.
Absolutely. So talking about reading, what do you like to read, Sarah? And have you read anything recently that you could recommend to us?
I can actually. I've read a few good books. I've been on it's a nice phase. I think when you're sort of writing and editing, and particularly in the last stages, my brain is genuinely quite maxed out by words, and I do find it quite hard to sort of, when I'm in the copy edit stage, to read. But I've had that sort of nice break in between starting. I've read a few good books actually. One, a debut by Tricia Secklecker called The Inheritance. Which I think is coming out next year. I was lucky enough to read a proof of that, and that's really, really good. Slightly Succession style, sort of locked room thriller, very, very good. And then I've also read 2 American books, actually, which I'd sort of read about. And it was one of those things I sort of put my wish list, could I have these 2 books for my birthday, without knowing too much about them. And one is called The Winners, by Teddy Wayne, which is amazing. It's slightly talented Mr. Ripley, follows a young tennis coach, who goes into a sort of exclusive community in America to teach tennis. And things take a bit of a bloody turn. And also Bad Summer People by Emma Rosenblum, which slightly reminded me a little bit Leanne Moriarty, that kind of cast of characters.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah, really, really good. Really, top reads of the year so far, definitely.
Oh, they sound great. I do love that sort of, you know, talented Mr. Ripley, sort of that sort of, you know, enigma character that, you know, you don't really, that sounds, yeah, I'll be
Yeah,
definitely looking at
and
that
it's that
one.
idea of sort of skewering the sort of wealthy. His sort of, yeah, it's really, really cleverly done. Really, yeah, I'm going to be reading more of his books. Really good.
Oh, it's nice, isn't it, when you find an author that you haven't read before and they've got other stuff as well. So, I mean, it's great when you read a debut and you know, you think, oh, this person's got a lot more to give, but actually they haven't got anything to give at the moment. But
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, it is.
it's nice to be able
Nice.
to go, you know.
But yeah, that's the power, I think, of recommendation and reviews. I can't remember which review I read, but particularly the winners. It would be a book I hadn't heard about. So
No,
yeah, it's
I
really,
haven't.
you read
So
a
I've written
review that's kind
it
of,
down.
yeah, compelling. And yeah, I genuinely, I sort of hadn't read a book cover to cover. I've got a little reading chair in the corner you can't see here, and that was one I kind of topped up and read in a weekend. So good.
Oh, that's good. That's a really good recommendation. So the book was out. What day is it today? Thursday. Its book out was out Tuesday. Yeah, I know.
It was
And so you've had a really busy week, haven't you, with everything? And so have you got any other events lined up for your sort of publication week?
Yeah, a few more sort of publicity events, but no more sort of bookshop events. So I'm going to be sort of tucked up at home, sort of recuperating. And I haven't really had a chance to sort of, I suppose, celebrate sort of seeing the book. I had a nice moment today of seeing the book in the supermarket and bookshops, which is amazing. But not that kind of quiet moment you absorb. Yes, it's finally sort of out into the world. So yeah, nice over the weekend, just a sort of bit of relaxation. And then sort of I've got a holiday planned, and then more events locally in September, which is nice. So a few library events. So looking forward to those.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So Devon Libraries, is it? Are you around Devon and
Yeah.
Torbay?
Bovey Tracy Library as well. So I've
Oh,
done
yes.
a few local events. I've done sort of Churston Library, Paynton Library, just ahead of publication. So yeah, heading a little further afield, and Honiton as well. Should be good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, my next door neighbour runs Honiton Library.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's so directly connected. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. Oh well,
yeah. Say hello ahead of time.
I will. Yeah. Well, it's been really lovely to talk to you again. And I've loved all three of the books. So just before we go, if you'd like to sort of say, you know, have a little elevator pitch about The Wilds, why anybody should pick it up if they see it in the supermarket or the bookshop this weekend.
Yeah, probably a little elevator pitch. I think if you like a kind of thrillers set in wild and remote landscapes, The Wilds could be a read for you. And also books, it's a book I think that touches on, I suppose, the darker side of relationships. So if you like that sort of emotional, I suppose, perhaps depth to the characters and the plots, then hopefully The Wilds is the read for you.
No, it definitely is, and I'm a little sad that it's come to the end of the series, but I'm really looking forward to your sort of your next year, or whenever it comes out. I guess it'll be next year, will it?
I think not next year. It probably will be the year after. So
so 2026. Yeah. So I'm going to have to wait a little bit longer, but hopefully you'll come back.
Unless I
come back and chat to us about it. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and have a good weekend.
Oh, thanks so much, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.